It's great to be here. Thank you guys, appreciate your time. Hello everybody, I'm Jesse Forman, Vice President of Enterprise Partnerships at Suzy. We work with many of the brands in the room. If you don't know us, we are a real-time consumer intelligence platform that integrates quant and qual, along with a mix of AI. We actually have some very exciting AI capabilities coming out tomorrow. If you know Suzy, you could be on the lookout for those, check them out. But this session is very much not about Suzy. It is about Matt. I'd like to introduce Matt, SVP of Card Acquisition Marketing at Discover. Really excited for the next 30 minutes to walk you guys through this talk. So Matt, let's start by getting to know you a little bit better. Tell us who you are and what you do at Discover.
So I'm Matt Lattman. We good? Yeah. Okay, cool. I lead our marketing operations and application team for our credit card business. So that's everything that drives you into the credit card application, through the process, gets you underwritten, gets your line assigned, and then we hand off to the team that kind of manages that relationship and all of the things in between. As I've said before, and Allie from Brand Innovators just really likes this. I help people discover.
We love that.
That's a good phrase. Okay, so let's start with the big picture, Matt. Speaking of AI, so thinking about in what ways AI has already changed the state of customer acquisition across the financial services industry.
So in some ways, we've used AI for years. If you take the definition of AI as inclusive of machine learning, we've used models and have been really at the forefront of trying to ascribe value to customers, passing that back through and creating those feedback loops in what we do. We are newer to the world of actually using generative AI and developing new content. And that's because I was talking to some folks from pharmaceuticals this morning, and I realized that we're not the only regulated industry, but it is not always easy to create innovation in a financial services company. So we're newer to the game there. I see that really playing out in terms of how we manage compliance first. So if we can use generative AI to say, hey, this piece is going out as expected. It matches what we thought it would look like. If we're able to use it to generate versions up front that are compliant and then go through a human-led approval process, we start to unlock some of the power of artificial intelligence to make our lives easier and bring creativity to the forefront of acquiring customers.
Makes a lot of sense. I want to talk a little bit about search. When you and I were chatting yesterday, you had some really unique takes on search, and I do a lot of work with the likes of Google and Microsoft and others, and I haven't heard people talk about this that much. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on search. What does the next phase of search sort of look like, and where do we think things are going with AI?
Well, I think we have to start with the customer lens, right? So if you go back 20 years and you think about kind of that early Google search experience, like you had your 3 and 10, right? You had your 3 paid links at the top, your 10 links, you were probably on a desktop. Then Google started to bring more links in, more experiences in, and so you got that organic content kind of lower on the page, but you knew where to find it, it was still there. Then we went into mobile, fewer and fewer, and about 5 or 6 years ago, I was like, okay, voice is gonna be the next thing. It didn't work out that way. But the idea was like one answer. And so I think that's where search is going, is that you're going to get to one answer. And Google's already said this, right? They've already come out and said, why should we're supposed to answer people's questions. Why should we be taking you to somebody else to answer the questions for you? And so I kind of expect that they're going to get to a single answer, and that's why we're seeing search generative experience, where they kind of auto-write the content. But they're not alone. And for the first time, really, in a long time, and I'm sorry, Microsoft, thank you for hosting us, but Bing didn't really do what Bing needed to. There's a lot of value. There's a lot of great stuff that Microsoft has done, but I think some of Bing's remaining share is there to stave off the last of the antitrust for Google. Should I have not said that?
No, I love it. I love it.
But, like, there's real competition. OpenAI, first of the game with ChatGPT. Perplexity, Claude, the DeepSync, is that what it's called? There's so many out there. And so, if you start to expect people are just going to ask questions into those UIs, then what does Google do? They still have to answer the question. And this is where things get really interesting, is like, OpenAI has some runway on this crazy valuation that they have, where they're going to be able to raise money, they're going to be able to burn money, but they're not making money. Google needs to be able to make money. And so somehow Google is going to have to balance ads and monetizing with giving a single answer. And so that's where, like, I'm spending a lot of time thinking and partnering with our agency partners who are in the front with to report back on what crazy I say. No, I'm just kidding. But where we're spending time trying to learn as much as we can is around, like, how are they going to monetize it so that we can be in the front of that game? Because I'd expect from our point of view, you have PageRank, you have a scoring algorithm for organic. Well, there's always been a scoring algorithm on paid as well, right? There's quality score, and it does rate into what you wind up paying, but it's not been as robust because it hasn't needed to be. I think it becomes a lot more robust, and a lot of what we see that goes into what Google expects good performance to be drives how much you pay for search so that they can incent the right behavior from advertisers. But they're going to have to figure out how to make that a paid model. To a lot of the conversations about, like, virtual shoppers and things like that earlier, I fully expect that in paid search.
I liked yesterday when we were talking, and you were like, I wonder if it's just whoever pays the most to have that be the answer that generates from the platform. So I guess a little time will tell, and we'll see if that pans out. How do you think messenger-driven approaches will change the way brands optimize their search results going forward?
Well, again, I think that it's going to come back to how do you then, if that's a new standard and you're trying to think about, well, what can I learn from SEO and apply into paid? That's where I think that there's a lot to be learned. There's just a different way that the teams think. And I tried an experiment and put, my paid team and my organic team together under one leader. And it's been really, really fascinating because I was really clear, like, the outcome is not for the paid people to become organic and the organic people to become paid, because they just think about the world very, very differently. But if I can get them to learn just a little bit, it will influence each other and make each other smarter. So if you want to, instead of trying to do the old world of, like, we are going to find the most esoteric keyword to bid on, creating relevant context so that the algorithms can optimize and rank you up in your bidding, in your kind of paid organic hybrid, I think is going to be the answer, where we're going to see search go. And it'll be conversational in nature.
Yeah, I fully agree. Conversational for sure. Jumping back a little bit to AI, how do you approach using AI when it comes to some of the work that you're doing, and what sort of advice do you have for folks in the room who either are a little hesitant to play with AI or trying to figure out how to start that journey?
Okay, so the first thing is play with it, just jump in. I think the more that I've been talking to people today, the more that I've been kind of listening to the conversation, I think we're at a point where AI is like big data a few years ago. Like, everybody felt like they were expected to know what it meant, and nobody really knows what it is and can't really define it. And so then, like, people are like, oh yeah, I'm doing AI. Well, just play with it. See what's possible. See what some of the limitations are. Sometimes you'll use an AI. I saw recently there was somebody posted an Amazon shopping fail, and it was basically somebody had tried to write all of their product descriptions using AI, and the product description was like, OpenAI does not allow you to put trade. And it was like so funny because people didn't read it, but you have to use it to understand where it works really well and where, like, we're asking too many things. We're telegraphing too many steps on the journey. And of course you're going to get hallucinations because the AI can't fully read your mind. It can learn from the way that you talk to it, but it can't, if you don't tell it what you want it to do, it won't do that thing. So So you have to kind of play around. And in our environment, we're a Microsoft shop, so I've been playing with Copilot. Sometimes it works really great, sometimes it doesn't, but I'm learning and I'm teaching myself how to write better prompts, and I'm teaching my team how to write better prompts so that they're ready when it gets better and they're ready to find value in the new world. It also allows us to then go and kind of pitch use cases, which are really tough. I think we were talking yesterday about how, I wanted one of our agencies to basically write a Python script that would run what's the best credit card through ChatGPT every day and record the answer, right? Just like we do in paid search, just like we do in organic search for years. This is just what you do. And I took it through our Gen AI Council. As I said, it's Gen AI. I think I need like a updated contract or something. I need like a writer. And they're like, we don't even know how to answer your question. And so we're not really sure if we can let you do this or not. Now think about that. Like, they gave me the worst non-answer possible because they really were just scared to even explore it. Whereas what I had wished the answer was is, let's walk through, let me see exactly what you're doing, let me see the output, and then let's try to assess the risk and close the risk for the company. So I think the next step is like using it to help educate, but it's hard. It's really hard. So if any of you have advice for how to deal with difficult compliance and cybersecurity teams, find me.
Or if you work at a smaller company, get in there and start playing around before that department stood up and they tell you not to. I think just on a more personal note for Suzy also, I just want to emphasize that I think playing with AI is just the best place to start. I just had a baby in September and I was out for 3 months, and when I got back to work, it was like, we're doing everything with AI, and I was like, I don't know what's going on, I don't know what this is, and how do I start? And I called my CEO and he was like, just start playing with it. Jump into whatever tool it is and experiment. And he was a really early adopter in that. He actually built something very cool at our company, Suzy, and this point a little bit older in the AI world, but we use a tool called Gong, if anyone in the room is familiar. It records all your customer conversations, and he fed 20,000 customer conversations into a custom chat GPT that is now searchable for the entire company. It helps a new hires onboarding. You're on a call with someone and you want to know a case study. I'm talking to Matt, trying to maybe sell him a Suzy partnership, and I'm not as familiar with the financial vertical and how people are using the platform. Pop it into the tool, generate some questions, feedback, things like that, case studies. That's a little bit more in-depth in how to explore AI and how we're doing it at Suzy, but I really think that if you guys do anything after this session, these sessions today, just open it up. Open it up on your phone. You could change the voice, make it fun for you. My president at Suzy is British, and now the AI talks with a British accent to her, and she loves it. So definitely get in there and play around for sure.
Can I try an experiment?
Please.
Okay. This may not work, so I'm prefacing if it doesn't work. So raise your hand if you work for a company with over 1,000 people. Okay, keep your hand raised if you believe that your CEO uses AI regularly. So I think when I look at the boardroom, and I had this realization, I was in a meeting discussing, credit trends and stuff with a lot of our C-suite at Discover, and I said something about the price of eggs, and I got a bunch of funny looks, and I realized I was the only one in the room who still bought my own eggs. And so like when we address it with that, right, this is a bunch of leaders in marketing organizations, right? When you address how do I teach and how do I come to the realization that this is very new, and probably that there's a lot of preconceived notions about how it works with each level above, I think that that's going to help all of us. I mean, I'm going to try it a lot more with my boss. I've done a few silly things that just kind of are like, hey, AI is kind of fun. It's not so scary. And hopefully, like, maybe through those activities, we'll start to get more and more traction and adoption, because, sometimes it's 2 or 3 people fighting the good fight at a big company.
Absolutely. We didn't talk about experiment ahead of this, but I did like that it went well, so that's great. We talked a lot about, obviously, the role of AI, but where do you, and you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but AI can't be the end-all, be-all. People are still very much involved in this process. So how do we look at the role of AI, the role of people, and merging the two in regards to Discover or otherwise to make sure we're kind of following due course and also making sure things stay on track?
Yeah, again, I think the challenge with generative AI especially is that it's doing a number of functions. And so it's really interesting, and we were talking about this at the new AI Council this morning, about how there's a need for better education for marketers end-to-end about how all this stuff works. But you're taking multiple predictive algorithms and stacking them up against each other. So again, if you try to do too much, you're going to get a weird answer because the algorithm is taking steps that you didn't intend and you didn't tell it to take. So it's ultimately our fault when the robots come and get us. But what I found was we were going to Money 2020 last year, and I had a team member that had early Copilot access, and I'm like, they don't have good summaries. Go get us a summary of all the companies presenting. And so he tried some prompt engineering, and he got to a pretty good outcome. But there were a lot in the summary with the same exact description. So when it failed and it couldn't find a company, it either picked the wrong company with a similar name, or it just came up with a generic description. And so the challenge that I see is that right now humans absolve themselves from the process. That's the scary thing. Kid writes a term paper with AI. Are they actually reading the AI output and then trying to make it their own? Or are they just letting the Gen AI tool do its thing? The challenge is that we have to put controls and moderation around every step of the process, and we have to know the process that we want in order to ensure that the outcome is somewhat consistent in our path. And so I think that that's the human role, is 1, designing the process, 2, designing the prompts, and then 3, ensuring that we're getting the outcomes that we want through, monitoring and fixing when it's not. The other place is human interaction. So at Discover, we've my counterpart who handles a lot of the operations for our contact centers, they've done a ton of work to organize and build bots that help agents answer questions in the moment. Well, to us, our whole experience, I don't know if you have, I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand if you have a Discover card, because that experiment doesn't always go. But I'm in acquisition, so if you do, it's actually good either way. But our thing is we give good value across the way. So you're going to get a good rewards redemption. You're going to get treated fairly. And if you call in, you're going to get the nicest people ever. They're going to answer your calls quickly. They're going to treat you like a human. And they're going to really try to help. And I've seen this. I'm a customer. I've experienced it. It's really wonderful. So we don't want to replace our agents with chatbots necessarily. We want to augment our agents because they can provide that human experience. What we don't want is our agents putting people on hold and having to look up a bunch of procedures and type things and try to figure it out. So if we use the AI to augment that process for them, they can still deliver a great experience. And that's, to me, a really powerful thing, because ultimately we're human. We want to engage with other humans.
Yeah, I fully agree. AI is a means, not the end result, and using it to make processes faster, more agile, more efficient. But yeah, I think people don't want to chat with a bot when they're trying to, get questions answered about their cards. Let's focus, switching in a little more to things at Discover. So let's talk a little bit about personalized marketing. And AI or otherwise, how do you use technology to personalize your offers as far as your acquisition efforts?
So we use a lot of machine learning. We really try to use the data that we have. We have all sorts of data, right? You have credit data, you have past performance of campaigns. You try to bring it all together and get it as close and as right as you can. What I'm really excited about is some of the work around trying to understand a creative message and collect data on what a customer is seeing. So right now we know touch points, but as far as like past experience that I've had and kind of looking at touchpoint data, you tend to have like, oh, they saw an ad. Well, what ad? What was the context of that ad? What did it look like? Because all of that stuff matters a lot in creating a personalized journey. So I think the answer, this is, I'm not sure, we're still trying and testing, is a few different versions of creative that we then apply data to assign people to a creative path or journey. So it's a lot of cohorting, but it's just more flexible. So we're creating the ads kind of independently but informed by the cohorts, and then introducing new ads to kind of enable us to talk to people more directly. But ultimately, people want to resonate. People are going to resonate to different things, right? Our two most popular cards, one is a rose quartz card, one is a gold card. I'm not going to say that the rose quartz card has stronger affinity among women, because I'm not actually allowed to know that, right? That's a law, or that's our compliance team's perspective of the law. But I imagine that if I'm able to feed a gender attribute into a model somewhere, then maybe for some, there are going to be some men that really like that pink card, and they're going to pop, and we're going to get that data back. And rose quartz card. And then there's going to be, some women that want a gold card because it empowers and makes, it feels like a card, especially for younger people, that it's something special, right? And some people are going to want the original Dawn of Discover retro card that I have, and some people are going to want our frog card. And we can do some really, really cool stuff around having these different cards and having these different experiences. But I need to bring data in to not only inform the targeting, but also to help us identify white space, so then we can go and develop new card art. So it's a really kind of cool thing, because it's very personal to who you are, what card you carry. And yet everything is sea of sameness. So it's one of the things that we can do to show that value to people.
Absolutely. And you talked a bit about the creative process. Switching a little bit back to the AI kind of conversation, what role do you think AI should play, will play, which is who knows, right? But will play in that sort of creative development process?
I really like it for ideation. Give me 15 different, landing page briefs, or like try to construct a different story in how would you explain the benefits of this credit card to X audience. We treat it very exploratory, very early on. We also use it to bring the vast amount of research that we have together. So we'll try to just like sift through and ask questions. Again, early on, not using it as kind of what we do every day, but using it to try to develop the skill set in the team, bring a lot of stuff together. Then the human steps in and says, okay, this is what the insight that we want to test is. But we use it to kind of prompt and ideate and create and drive creativity. So at least my belief is, like, if you want humans to do great work in the process, and AI can do parts of it, you have to design a process that has very specific and discrete points where a human does certain work and where the tools do certain work. Otherwise, there's just going to be massive amounts of frustration.
You talked about process a couple times today. For those who don't have one or are starting that process, a lot of process, is it do you have the process first before you start playing with the tools, or it's a little bit of building the plane sort of while you're flying it?
Both. I don't know. It's, I think we start with the process. We're learning a lot of the things that we've done for years are not things that are going to work very well in, with more versions, right? If you have a direct mail process designed for one creative, and everything's like, we're going to send ours is for more than that, but like, if you're going to send one creative and no tests, then there's a lot of work to say, okay, now I'm going to send 10 different things out all at once and test. test, right? If you haven't ever used a DCO and you decide that you want to use a DCO, you have to like rewrite your process. But not having that path mapped out and not having, you know, a document of whatever it is. It could be a process map. It could be like an outline. It could be, there's a million ways to do it. But like, if you don't know the path from point A to point B and you can't test what you want to do against that, you're not going to be able to execute it well.
Fully agree. I know we're getting close on time. I guess I want to leave time for some questions too. So let's leave you with a final question. Hard one to answer, but let's say a year from now, we're back here talking about similar conversations. What do you think the themes are? What do you think we are talking about in regards to AI or other new tools that might be coming?
So I think that the story about models starts to fade away, and it's already fading, even though like Grok just had the biggest, you know, whatever, trained the model on largest data set ever. They haven't released the performance data yet. Maybe they have in the last few hours, but you know, my guess is even if it outperforms, we're getting to the point where like the predictive model is pretty good. They're all pretty good. Years ago, you know, Slack put out an ad like, Teams, we know that you're coming for us, but you're not going to catch us, kind of thing. Like, Teams wasn't great, and it was kind of, now it's pretty good. Like, I don't mind Teams. I've been using it a while. Again, like, I like Teams. Slack is great too. You know, it's not so different, right? And so this race for like the core underlying technology isn't going to be the discussion. All of the ones that you have will be good. I think the conversation becomes like, how are we building alternate data sets that then get applied to it? So like, what is your competitive advantage? So if the model's not the competitive advantage, what is it and how are you differentiating? Because all of these models are basically, they're predictive. So they're by definition reversion to the mean of whatever you're giving it. So then how do you create greatness if everything's going to revert to a mean? You have to create new data sets. You have to create new prompts. You have to create new ways of creating. And I think that's where the innovation is going to be over the next few years, is like people are kind of getting more comfortable with base technology. They're kind of getting comfortable with the investment in it. Now we've got to shift to like really getting these use cases right.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. I want to turn it over to you guys. What questions do you have for Matt?
You're doing it, right? Like that's exactly what it is, right? It's trial and error a little bit. It's getting comfortable. It's saving things that have worked and trying them again and seeing if it works the same. I actually did an experiment. I used it to summarize performance feedback. So I spent a bunch of time crafting my prompt and rewriting it so that when I went out to like, instead of going to 5 or 10 people and getting feedback on my employees, I went to like 25 per direct, and it was a little insane. And then I got back a lot of feedback, actually. I got more than I've ever gotten back. And I'm like, okay, I have 9 pages of feedback were now written, in some cases even more, per employee. How am I going to summarize this and write it into their review? So I tried a bunch of different ways and I tested. I'm like, does this actually feel like this person? Is it my bias? Is it not? Tried a different way. And so that was just an experimentation. Now I have this prompt that I feel really, really good about because it's well honed for my use case of how do I summarize this feedback. But if I change the inputs, I'm also going to have to change prompt. So it's not going to necessarily work for somebody else's prompt who hasn't asked those questions, who hasn't kind of structured what they've wanted to do in the same way. But it's just getting in there and playing. That's, to me, the most valuable skill.
And you found that.
In that use case, but I had to learn, for instance, I was like, give me a list at the bottom of pull quotes, or for each bullet, give me a list of direct quotes that I could then paste in as examples of each behavior, right? And reference which it came from, right? So that I could tie back and make sure that see if it was a peer, or see if it was, an employee or something, so that I could use it in the right context. And like that took me 4 or 5 tries to get it to actually work. Once I got it, it was pretty consistent. Oh, there's a ton. And that was specific to the Discover process. That was a little bit of a blocker. The one that I tried, so this is a great example, like one that I tried last week is we've been working with one of our creative agencies and our media agency to try to see if we can use like a creative tagging tool and get some of that data. And there's a bunch of process of like, why do you need this? What's it going to do? Is it going to be customer facing? Like walking a bunch of engineers that don't know what I do every day, or a bunch of security people that don't know what I do through why that's not a security problem. So the alternate, I was like, let me build in Copilot myself. And so the first thing, I loaded a PDF of one of our creatives. I'm like, give me 50 elements that exist in this creative that are unique. So such as call to action, number of pages. Like I just kind of like seeded it and got to something that I was like reasonably comfortable with. And then I said, okay, great, run, now take these 2 lists, right, and fill out the next column in the spreadsheet for this creative. So I was trying to like seed a model to build. And immediately Copilot went and tried to build one of the ones that I wanted to know was % white space. And Copilot went out and tried to like run a Python script that required it to download a plugin that I don't know what it was. I'm on like my Discover machine, like it was shut down before it started. It was like, it can't access this. Luckily I didn't get the like, your boss has been notified again, because that one was really fun. And I told my boss and he's like, I didn't get a notification. They're just scaring you. Thought I was getting fired. And or at least he didn't read the email. But the other side of it is I can use a third-party tool, or I can use something outside of our wall and have the same level of protection without putting more risk in based on a tool that like works in a way that we didn't comprehend or didn't understand. People are going to play. That's what we do. We have the most fun when we play. And so as humans, right? And so like the more that we make great cultures, make play part of everyday work. And so if I create that on my team, I'm going to have situations where people are just going to try stuff. And so I need to be able to try some of these safer things. If it's not going out to a customer's hand, and it never will, do what you want to do. That's my wish. So hopefully that comes true. And we can actually try some things and play with it. It's not affecting consumers. Give us that sandbox to play.
I think we might have time for one more question. Anybody? Okay. Well, thank you guys so much. Please give a round of applause to Matt.
Thanks, Jesse.